really sticks with me, and I always paraphrase this, but it's Warren Buffett's quote. When others are greedy, be fearful. When others are fearful, be greedy.
We used to use Calendly, and our entire organization switched to cal.com. This podcast itself was scheduled through cal.com.
We are here to connect anybody. Crazy idea. It's really out there, but what if we made it like really free for individuals, like Gmail free, like the refugee camp, which is using cal.com to schedule incoming refugees with, doctor services or immigration services. I don't think you'll find an item of clothing above like $10 in my entire family's home.
You raised 32.4 million total.
Bootstrapping is awesome because who doesn't like to, stick their finger up to the VCs and be like, I don't need you.
Did you face any issues being an immigrant here?
Anything can happen. They can just, take away a visa whenever they want. Every time you go to the border and you get questioned, what do you do? What are you a founder of? What made you deserve the O1 visa? The burden of proof there is like so high. But the thing that will keep you awake every single night as any good founder is you're like, why are we not doing more?
Welcome to 0 to 1. I'm your host, Siam Hossein. I'm an immigrant founder. I bootstrapped my company to 7 figures while creating a community of 220,000 members. Currently, I run a hedge fund for immigrants. I started this podcast to share 0 to 1 stories of people who started with nothing but created something meaningful and impactful despite the odds. Today's guest is Bailey Pumfleet, co-founder and CEO of cal.com. It's an open source scheduling platform. They have raised 32.4 million, handled over 10 million in bookings, and wants to connect 1 billion people by 2031. Without further ado, let's dive in.
Bailey, I met you last year, almost a year now. Yeah. And I remember when I met you, it was kind of like a fanboy moment for me because I have been already using cal.com by that time for almost 2 years. We used to use Calendly, and our entire organization switched to cal.com. And then I met you, and I have been following you since then, and I've seen your growth. And interestingly, actually, this podcast itself in this venue was scheduled through cal.com. That was kind of like an interesting moment. And you're very public about your vision for the company, which is connecting 1 billion people by 2031. So I wanted to dive directly into the question that how did you come up with that specific date? How are the numbers now? And what's the roadmap?
Yeah, 2031 was just 10 years from when we started. So we did start in early 2021. And, the vision for cal.com has always been a mass infrastructure company. We are here to connect anybody, no matter whether they're just, random individuals booking each other. That could be friends, that could be small businesses, or that could even be governments and enterprises and things like that. So, we really wanted to shoot big, and we look at companies like WordPress and things like that on how they power like half of the internet and things like that. And we really wanted to shoot for a really ambitious number, say like 1 billion people in those 10 years. And now, of course, we never imagined it to be exactly linear progress. Just like anything with cal.com, it's very exponential. I love going onto all the dashboards and metrics and watching just the number of bookings, the number of users, everything just climbs and climbs and climbs. On cal.com alone, we're at just over 10 million people connected. And across all of our self-hosters and things like that, because we're open source, there are different people running their own instances. I think we're around 30 million across all self-hosters. So yeah, we really want to build this sort of like network effect of just infrastructure and something that's just so embedded into the web, into technology itself, much like WordPress or things like that, where it's not necessarily super centralized, but through the power of open source, it's just everywhere. And then, in those 10 years from now, I should be booking my doctor's appointment. I should be booking anything. All of these podcasts should be booked on cal.com. There's no reason why we can't be the operating system for everything scheduling related.
That's an interesting. I always was curious. 2031, so specific. 10 years. Did it change after you started? Like, did you recalibrate your goal now, or like, how is that? Or it's still 2031?
It's still 2031. We're still going to go for it. It is a very sort of outlandish goal. of course. We recognize that from the start. You know, we don't mean to sound like every other over aspirational set of founders. But that being said, a lot of what we started off with, a lot of what we have now remains fundamentally the same. We've always had this kind of tagline of sorts since day one, which is scheduling infrastructure for absolutely everyone. And throughout the 4.5 years that it's been, we never really deviated too much from it. That was always the long-term vision, and that still plays the biggest part in what we do. Although, of course, we spent like the first year building consumer, then we built, Teams, which was like small SaaS. Over the long term, we're always working towards this goal of truly, truly creating that infrastructure for everyone. And so I think that's one of the things that's been really remarkable. A lot of startups pivot, like I've done that before, everybody's done that. But what's been incredible for us is just how almost unwavering our goals, our mindset has been since even coming up with the idea of the company, let alone incorporating it or even formally starting it.
When did you start like Cal.com, or like when did this whole thing start?
It was around April 2021. I know we launched on April 15th, 2021. Me and my co-founder, we spoke in the early days, kind of worked on it a bit throughout late February. And basically what happened is once me and my co-founder met each other and decided it was a good fit to be working together, once again, we set an outlandish goal. We're launching on April 15th. It doesn't matter what has been shipped. It doesn't matter what hasn't been shipped. We're launching. And so we really had just a very fixed deadline as to when we actually needed to put something out there. And I worked as hard as I could towards that launch date and pulled many, like 3 a.m. nights every night. Definitely fun times, definitely a lot of good memories. But yeah, I mean, I think it's that thing of just like set yourself that goal and try to stick to it no matter what. And that's something that I try to apply throughout like personal life and things like that, is just a very concrete goal.
Yeah, so a couple of good points there. One is setting the goal. How old were you when it was like April 15, 2021?
I was 17.
17. You're
Yeah.
not even at the age of drinking alcohol. Basically, like you're
No.
How did you like come up with this idea of like solving a scheduling problem and not going for there are so many that time, like you could have gone for crypto, you could have gone for like just a AI. I mean, AI wasn't as hyped back then, but it was still kind of going there. Why? I mean, I shouldn't say like boring, but topic like scheduling is not the sexiest thing people can solve. What
Yeah.
made you get into this?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think in general, it just really goes back to like the kind of person that I am. I don't chase the latest thing whenever anybody says, oh, have you watched the latest Netflix show? Whenever everybody's saying, oh, have you seen Squid Game? Chances are, no, I've not. And I don't get influenced by what everybody else is doing. And so I've always remained a skeptic of a lot of new hyped up technologies. And that was crypto back in the day, then Web3. And I was always like, I don't really believe in this. And even to some degree, AI. No, I mean, I think AI is absolutely here to stay. I think it's proven the test. It's crossed the threshold.
Yeah.
But I think everybody right now is just scrambling to embed AI into their products no matter what. Mm-hmm. And, if you're not working on AI stuff right now, you're a laughing stock. But I think that sometimes the better approach is to sit back and wait. I think if you look at Apple right now, everybody's laughing at them because, they're not really progressing with AI. But at the end of the day, they're going to sit and wait around, wait till everybody's, finished the race of building the best like foundational models. And then they're just going to go in and like buy Anthropic or buy, something like that. And I think that there's something pretty smart in that, For us still, we don't chase AI features. We sit there and we're like, okay, we're doing something very fundamental here. Let's just focus on that. And then, AI features and things like that. Let's truly see what the market wants without all the hype first, and then we do it. And so, yeah, over time, as much as everybody thinks, let's do Web3, let's do that. That's never really been what it's about. And I think that I really do believe that the strongest companies do the most boring of things. Well, like the huge companies, DocuSign. Like, does anybody care about document e-signatures? Is that a fun thing to build? No. I am the most boring guy to talk to at networking events when they say, what are you working on? I always feel like I go to networking events and they're like, I'm building an AI product that lets you talk to your dog, or I'm building this crazy decentralized Web3 whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I do scheduling. And in a sense, that's kind of boring, but I genuinely believe that kind of results in the best companies. I think if you take any large startup that you think of, like Stripe, God, payment processing, that's a hellish nightmare. But the thing is companies like Stripe, I mean, we're all very bullish on because they solve something fundamental that nobody else wants to solve. We just solve something else that's fundamental that nobody else truly wants to solve.
Yeah, so what an amazing, like the first learning from you is basically like boring is cool. Like we have to make boring cool again. And something I can relate to personally on with you here, because I have also seen a lot of these hypes, like technology in general as a field goes through all this innovation. But if you're sticking to one focus, like that has been, I think, like your main thing, that you're like not getting deviated with whatever is coming, because there's always something new coming in technology. So that is something very interesting, your focus. I'm really curious, and I wanted to ask you this question for a long time. Is that I want to understand how your mind operates from your childhood perspective, like how you grew up. Is there anything in your own operating system which made you this way? Not chase the FOMO, not chase the boring, having this focus, like what made you this way? Because we can take whatever is built on cal.com, let's say, and you can start from zero again. But I think you can again do it because your mindset is already like solid. So tell us a little bit about like your childhood, how you grew up, and what are the things we can, just share your story.
Yeah, and it's a great question because I really do owe so much to my parents, my childhood, and the experiences that entailed. And I see a lot of similarities as to like how that just influences me as a person today. So I grew up just east of London, in a family that like was relatively poor. My parents always worked like super hard. My dad has worked really hard throughout his entire life, even still to today. And, we grew up just being complacent, never like chasing the material things. I actually made a joke earlier about this to someone else on my team, but I said, I don't think you'll find an item of clothing above like $10 in my entire family's home. Because even though that through just pure hard work and dedication that my dad brought us, like up into, comfortably middle class now, I think a lot of those traits and those experiences and things like that really stay with you. And so I think that we sit in a reality today where, yeah, of course, it's about not chasing the shiny new thing. And that shiny new thing could be a Gucci belt, or it could be, like Web3 or AI. There really is something to just value about just good, like going back to basics, good, hard, honest stuff. And that's really what kind of like scheduling is. That's really what any of this is. And it also changes the way that I operate as a founder. I think there's a lot of people who say, oh, I don't do this for the money. I mean, like 90% of founders do it for the money. The 10% that don't are doing it for fame or something like that. But, for me, genuinely, I'm really driven by the vision of cal.com. And that is the thing that keeps me going every single day. And, without trying to sound like everybody else is saying this and be such a cliche, there have been times where we have had an opportunity for an exit, one way or another. An exit that would probably have put me, my co-founder, and even the team in like a very nice financial situation, we'll just say. And I'm just like, nah. And they're like, huh? Like, you didn't even really think about it. I don't really sit there and deliberate about it, because that connect 1 billion people by 2031. That's what drives me. Like, I cannot give up on this thing until I have fulfilled the vision of maybe not necessarily 1 billion people. That's a very sort of like quantitative goal, but rather on the qualitative side, I want in 2031 to be in a situation where everybody's using cow.com and it becomes a household name, much like, if I want to send you some money, I'm just going to Venmo you. That's become a household term. Like, I want cow.com to just become part of everybody's core stack. And then as well as that, I want to work with all of these businesses and governments and charities and things like that to just make all of the scheduling inefficiencies easier. Like, everybody jokes to me like, wow, can you guys partner with the DMV and things like that? But in reality, we've worked with government organizations that have like made things so much better for people. We work with a part of the Brazilian government where when you get like passports and ID cards and things like that, before it was first come, first serve basis. So people were queuing in like the cold and the rain outside in the morning, waiting for their like ID card collection. And now they just book their appointment on cow.com and it's wonderfully easy. And there are so many other use cases and examples. And, for me, the stories that mean the most to me are not the times when we closed a 7-figure deal or something like that, but it's rather the story I hear about the refugee camp, which is using cow.com to schedule incoming refugees with, doctor's services or immigration services and things like that. As they come in, you're just connected via cow.com with the experts that you need. And that's making a real impact on people's lives. And that is the thing I'm the most proud of. I do not sit here bragging about any numbers of ARR, user count, anything like that. The thing I really brag about is that we make a difference in people's lives. And, that also goes out to all of the tens of thousands of like small businesses as well, which operate on things like cow.com. We all have some kind of tech stack. What would you do if Google Drive disappeared or, suddenly Venmo disappeared or this? We all rely on some of these things. And I just want cow.com to be one of those things that you rely on. So, that's the thing. My childhood taught me about being dependent, being just like sticking to the roots, keep it simple and just build something worthwhile.
Yeah, thanks for sharing this, because when you're sharing this whole thing, I realized that you are actually building something which you yourself experienced as a child. Is that you're it seems like you come from a very humble or grounded family. Thanks to your parents, to be honest, for raising you. And essentially with the tool you're creating, you want like to help, like average people help. Basically, that's the goal. You want every average family, every average small business to use this tool and feel that how it helps their lives become simple. That's awesome, man. I actually didn't know this grounding story. I think you also basically like changed the name. I saw that in Hacker News. I was just doing some research on you. That 2021 Hacker News you launched and it was called Calendso. Why change the name? And the reason I'll ask you why I'm asking this question, because like I have thought about changing my company's name a couple of times because like, is it too big? So yeah, like why did you change and what was the motive?
Yeah, we launched as Calendso. It was just one of those domains that was available, to be honest. Nowadays you want a .com, you don't exactly have the pick of the bunch. So yeah, Calendso was the original brand name. It was okay. We had a nice little branding and design guidelines and things like that, but it was like cute little competitor. It didn't really scream like we are the scheduling software. And so we went a few months in. We were obviously going along doing our thing, growing. And we really started to think about like we need a really good brand name. I mean, first of all, we're in the link sharing business. I am cow.com/Bailey. I tell you, book me, cow.com/Bailey, cow.com/this. It sounds a little bit better than calendso.com/Bailey. The more syllables, the less cool it is to tell someone your scheduling link. But no, I mean, we looked at various brand name options, and especially for acquiring a .com like that can get very expensive. But like I say, half of our business is link sharing, and we wouldn't be who we are today if we weren't Cal.com. People wouldn't look at us the same if we were Calendso. And not to say that, go buy a oneword.com and you'll suddenly be the best company on earth, but it certainly commands a respect, a persona around the brand. I kid you not, you literally see it. You go tell somebody brand new about this stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's Cal.com. And they're like, oh, that's a nice domain name. And you immediately see their brain just turn on. And I use that in the context of, say, a networking event where 1 million people are going to pitch you their startup, and you're not really going to care about 99+% of them. As soon as I tell people Cal.com, they're like, oh, let me check that out. Oh, you have a nice name. And then as well, invest in the branding. We put a lot into design and branding and things like that. They see the landing page, they're like, this looks nice. And I kid you not, that motivates people to sign up by multitudes more. I'd love to get some kind of study one day that actually quantifies this, but it's absolutely incredible just how more interested people are in the brand when you've got a short brand name like that. So I always think that changing a brand name is one hell of an expense, both in terms of money and time, and formerly known as Calendso for a while, but wow, is it worth it? I always say, just in terms of the money, I think we would pay many times what we paid for the domain name, and it would still be worth it because it just really makes you who you are.
I agree that I also love Cal.com's name, and also the branding around it is that you give everything very simple and minimalistic. There is something about your overall execution that it has to be very minimal, and it's not so glossy. It's flat design. Even the design is very flat and simple. And Cal.com, so easy. How would you mind sharing how much did you buy it for? Is it a disclosable number?
The weird thing is with a lot of these domain acquisitions, most of them have to be under NDA. I assume so. We can't go tracking down the dude that sold it to us, and then we know how much money he now has in his bank account.
Sure, but wise,
yeah, it's definitely well into the 7 figures. And
wow.
And when it comes to oneword.coms, the range is so wide. You have some people who bought incredible oneword.coms for 50K, and then you have some that paid 30 million. And like I say, that is really a range. But although we definitely paid, not up in the 30 million for sure, but we'll just say into the 7 figures.
Yeah.
It was still very much worth it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, like you say, the investment when you add on the investment in the brand and just really nailing that stuff as well, that's been just tremendously helpful for us. I guess the secret thing about our brand is that it was I actually got inspired by Uber in particular for this. The very black and white design, very functional user interfaces. Because once again, old people have to use Uber. You want it to be as just bold and easy to interpret, and that's essentially what Cal.com is supposed to be. Now, over time, we've tried to make it, a little bit, polished and make it look a little bit sleek. But at the end of the day, it's always a very black and white, minimalist, very clean, very unopinionated as well. Because the unopinionated part about the design looks really nice for businesses that want to white label and everything like that you don't have to replace. Back in the Calendso days, it was a light blue, just some generic light blue that probably everybody uses. But the user interface would feel very opinionated and things like that, whereas Cal.com now is just almost like a blank canvas, albeit a very functional one, that everybody just kind of looks at and they're like, this is very neutral, this is very adaptable.
Yeah, simplicity rules. I think you obviously had to have some money to be able to buy that domain. So we'll go to that stage, it was a later stage business decision. But how did you get your first like literally first customer. I was doing some research also on this, and I saw that I think you guys launched in Product Hunt, and you had almost like 1,000 signups or something. And I guess I wanted to know the early stage, because once you are in the millions range, you are a little different stage of game. But tell me about your first dollar, the first person who paid you.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
You know, back in like the late February that I said, when we even kind of started to work on this, all that Calendso was effectively was just a landing page with a waitlist sign up. It's a habit of my co-founders where, like, if he's exploring an idea, he'll buy the domain just like everybody else does, build a little landing page, but put like a waitlist sign up. We do that as well for many sort of like sub products, features, and services within Cal.com. Just stick a landing page out there with a waitlist on it and see how many people sign up. That was what Calendso was in the early days, and you're right, there was 1,000 people signed up to that waitlist. We ended up drumming up some interest by creating like a community Slack, posted some like regular updates in there, tried to get people involved, worked decently well. And then, you know, I said that we set this date far out, and part of that reason is we wanted to build people up and build a clear momentum up to a singular sort of launch. And so, yeah, we basically told everybody on the Slack, mark your calendars, April 15th, we're launching. Then we start prepping. We reach out to like everybody we've ever known, to be honest. I'm not just going to say friends, because like when you're doing your big launch for your startup, you reach out to like anybody you've ever known. Even like that dude from 5 years ago that's like, you know, 10 hours of scrolling down in your messages, you know, like you message everybody about this stuff. And we just built up an absolute army of people that at 8 a.m. or whenever it goes live on Product Hunt on the 15th, that there's like a bunch of people that just, you know, give it that kick off the ground. Because like with anything, you know, success is compounding. If you're already at the top of Product Hunt, more people are going to see you, more people are going to upvote you. That applies to literally anything. That's why tweets either have like 13 likes or 130,000 likes. So yeah, I mean, we rallied everybody. They absolutely like came and delivered. Like I say, also on the day, just like calling up anybody you could, you know, share this around. Oh, I think like, I don't know how many members of my family got a Product Hunt account that day to upvote Calendso on launch day, you know. But yeah, I mean, that little kick off the ground, that's all that you needed to just like start that momentum. I think everything in life is about momentum. And it's never more true than when it comes to launching something. So yeah, launch day, we actually started as it was a paid only product. It was $15 a month. There was no free plan, and I honestly don't think I even knew how to build a free trial. So it was literally just like a paid product. And yeah, I mean, that morning we get like a Stripe notification, you know, like $15 invoice generated too, and then just like a random customer name. And we were like, wow. There's always like, it's always a remarkable moment. Like it doesn't matter whether you're making $10, whatever. I see these tweets on Twitter all the time, people like starting their first startups, and it's like, that's just such a relatable, such a incredible moment. And yeah, from there it's like droplets of water. You drop, you know, $15, drop, and throughout the day we were watching as you know, definitely like hundreds of dollars of subscriptions were started, even on that day. And it was like, wow, this is really cool. And yeah, it's definitely one of the most memorable milestones.
Definitely, because it's the first 0 to 1, the excitement. When you basically launched, like you said, like you didn't have the trial, you went directly to paid. How did you build the trust around the product that people are like was there some trust built around you or your co-founder? Like how were people comfortable paying that, where there are Calendly or like other giants already?
Yeah, I honestly don't think there was like a huge amount of trust or anything like that. It was simply too early for that. And, you know, who are we? Just any old pair of idiots that built a little SaaS app. But I think in reality, the thing which really got people to kind of like subscribe or sign up or anything in the early stage is we were open source. We were the open source Calendly alternative. And people love open source. Open source is just such a strong, beautiful community. A community that we love and is still a very sort of like close part of who we are and our values and things like that. And yeah, there's a lot of people in open source that like you want to support open source. I do the same thing. If I can go ahead and use an open source product, I'll use it. If I'll donate to them, I'll, like sign up if they have like some kind of paid plan and they're doing like a little bit of a commercialized open source. Yeah, I love supporting open source companies, and so do a lot of other people in that kind of space. So in the early stage, I think that we hinged on like open source as like day one. Then like weeks 2 and 3, it was like, oh, cool new product. They're giving it a bit of a new design and certain new features, just a few bits. So then we got like SaaS enthusiasts. And then over time, we built it up into being like a real viable product. But I honestly think, I don't even know how long this was. I think there was probably a period of like 3 or 4 months where I just did not think that like Calendso was even really a viable competitor or like a viable product to Calendly. In all honesty, as much as I, of course, did send everybody my Calendso link, if it was me, I'd have probably just used Calendly. Because say what you will about Calendly, but it's a damn solid piece of software, especially for just like an individual taking bookings. So there was always that imposter syndrome almost that are we a viable Calendly competitor, or are we just some like niche cool little thing that people are like, I'll check this out, I'll sign up, we'll see.
Yeah, and like when you actually launched, I love that you basically went open. So open source was basically kind of like your crowd originally. Were you intentionally open source from day one? Like that was the goal of the company? Like you will start as open source company?
Yeah, we were more or less open source from day minus whatever, because like I say, the original landing page with the idea, that was open source. We always said like it's gonna be under an open source license. You can do what you want with it. It was a real fundamental part to who we were. Now, that being said, that's one thing that has really changed about us, and we overestimated how big of a part that open source would play in the real world business. So as much as I say, open source and the community and everything like that is terribly important to us, and like we are big open source people. We believe in we believe in it and everything like that. In reality, Cal.com is not what it is because it's open source. Not today. To some degree, it helped us get off the ground. It helped us become noteworthy, remarkable. Maybe it could be fair to say that we wouldn't be where we were without it. But, nowadays, Cal.com is Cal.com because it's simply just the better scheduling product out there, not because, it's open source, let me try this thing. So, yeah, the initial crowd was definitely open source enthusiasts, though, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't help us.
Yeah, and I am maybe wasn't in your original crowd because that is a great business learning here, is that like always having the crowd, like early stage you need that support. I was actually, honestly, I switched to Cal.com for a very specific reason, is because your advanced feature, when I started rolling, it was like for a free product, it has so much capability. Like I could approve my bookings, which is like very important for me to actually make sure that not everyone is booking my calendar. And I was like, I think that was my main single reason, but you have so much feature for the free product. I'm like, wow, like why would anyone use any other tool?
That's the point.
Yeah, like I mean, for a free product, honestly, your free version is already very good.
When we did the rebranding, that was kind of part of, there was 2.0, there was announcing the Series A, there was the rebranding, and there was the free plan. And I remember this was like this was just one of those like crazy ideas that me and my co-founder mentioned on like one of our daily calls. We were like, crazy idea. It's really out there. But what if we made it like really free for individuals, like Gmail free? Like there's nothing to pay. And we were like, yeah, that's crazy. That would be cool though. That's crazy. That would be cool though. And then over the next few weeks, we were like, that would be cool. That would be cool. Until we formulated it into a real plan that Cal.com is truly free for individuals. One of the best moves we made.
Yeah, I agree. So like you started as a B2C, what I'm understanding, because like individuals. When did you transfer to like B2B or enterprise customers? And tell me a little bit about like your first customer, I guess, enterprise.
Yeah. So, what I said earlier was that Cal.com has been pretty unwavering in its long-term vision because, we always wanted to be serving these like infrastructure use cases. But the thing is we had to start somewhere. And after the product hunt launch, nobody really cared if we made scheduling APIs or enterprise stuff. We had to address the people that supported us, and those were the consumers. So we started out, being pretty B2C in the sense that we were just trying to build like the best individual scheduling product there is. And that means that we build all these little things that everybody so desperately wanted from the other competitors over years and years. Like, for instance, being able to approve or reject a booking based on like the context of it, which, is something that like pretty much any busy founder, you're going to get random people that email you that try to book your links, and you want to have some control over that. So that's kind of where we play into the whole typical thing that everybody says, listen to your users, build what your users want, that kind of thing. And that's where we had to sort of fulfill that. But the consumer side is just like the first part in like a 4-stage plan. And this is the plan that we really didn't waver from. It's we have the free plan, then we have Teams, which is just good SaaS. If you're working with multiple people or using Cal.com in a business context, there are like collaborative features and things like that in there. It's just nice little self-serve SaaS. And then above that, we have Enterprise, which was building like the industry's first truly enterprise-ready scheduling solution, because there aren't any out there that are actually that have all of like the checkboxes that a true enterprise company would need. And then finally, the fourth and final tier is that scheduling infrastructure, the APIs, the things that you need to build Cal.com scheduling technology into your platform. And that's what we kind of like executed across for all that time. So, and it really went like that. I remember our first, individual customer back when it was paid. But then I remember like the first Teams plan upgrade. That was like a huge sort of like feature release and everything like that. We released Teams, and back then the only difference in the Teams plan is that you could do a round robin event. That was it. Had like one tiny little like selection for a round robin event, and I was like, nobody's gonna pay like $15 a month upgrade from a free plan just to get like a round robin option. A couple of days later, somebody bit on Stripe, and I see the notification. I'm like, that's cool. And we're like, we really need to add some value to this now to not disrespect the people that are paying us for this. It's been so exciting every time we spend months and months of work building the enterprise product. That was a long time, huge engineering effort, and so much brainstorming, so much everything goes into this. And then once again, you get your first enterprise customer. It feels so rewarding each time, because it's really just a continuation of when you get your first customer day one. I think that a lot of founders have spent a lot of time building something for it to just not take off. It just flopped. That was honestly what half my life was before Cal.com. I built things and they flopped. And so to get that validation of like, wow, somebody's ready to like, hand over some money for this, it doesn't just stop once you've got your first customer on day one. It really happens every time you sell a new product or feature or add-on or something like that. And each time it's a really beautiful experience.
Yeah, you have this single KPI which you're following is about, delighting your customers. They can change over time. I wanted to learn a little bit about like your highest ROI decision you have made, where I guess like you made a very small change, tweaking in your process, but it had a massive jump either in the MRR or customer acquisition. Like it could be a simple UX improvement. I don't know what you changed, pricing improvement, but it has a huge bump and you're like so surprised.
I think it's definitely just in terms of like quality assurance. I think one thing that everybody's probably heard from somewhere before is like, as a founder, always keep your finger on the pulse. That's a lot harder in reality than you'd think. And especially when my work nowadays is so abstracted away from the product. Like, I don't code anymore. To be quite honest, I don't even use the product a huge amount because Cal.com is a lovely like set and forget piece of software. Like I go in to say like, oh yeah, I'm going to be in like SF next week. So like change my time zone for that. But aside from that, I don't log in too much. And, a few months ago, I went in and I was like, okay, I'm just going to like private tab, one of those disposable email addresses. I'm just going to sign up for this from scratch. And, just take screenshots and put it in Figma and just add comments everywhere. And wow, was I surprised. Turns out that if you just let engineers build things without too much oversight, then your product will have shitty UX. But yeah, there were so many little bits of low-hanging fruit, all little 5-minute fixes and things like that I could just go around and fix. And that has made such a huge difference in just A, how the product feels, B, it reduces a lot of customer confusion. There were people were shipping new like advanced configuration options and just putting them like smack on the main screen, and I was like, there's like under 1% of our users are going to use this. Like, let's tuck it away into like an advanced section and things like that, and that leads to people being less confused. It also helps upsell people more, especially if we go from like free to teams or teams to enterprise, which you can all do self-serve. Some of our self-serve flows were lacking, to say the least, and just simply going through and, at the end of the day, it's the founder that always has the vision, that always has that attention to detail for the product that nobody else does. Harness it. I know everybody says it, but you've really got to just keep your finger on the pulse always. I always know as well, the other one is one day you should just apply for a job at your own company and just be, like an undercover boss or something like that, go through the experience, because you find all of these things that you're like, oh my God, like who approved this? Who's responsible for this? Because yeah, you're the only one that's really going to catch that stuff out.
Yeah, you have to be the user yourself, like once in a while. I wanted to move to a little bit like funding, because people are always interested in funding. You raised 32.4 million total, 7.4 in seed, and then 25 million in Series A. And you have big names like Alexis Ohanian from Reddit or 776, and then Toby Lutke from Shopify, Naval Ravikant, Balaji, Anthony Pomp, like all the mega celebrities in the field. How did you like get to know these people, or how, like tell me a little bit about the fundraising?
Yeah, fundraising was both simultaneously fun and terrible. Like I said, everything is about momentum. And I remember when that first droplet hit, and that was actually on launch day, I got an email at maybe like 10 a.m. in the morning or something like that. And it was a VC reaching out and saying, hey, I saw your success already on Product Hunt, and, really cheering for you guys. Like hope the day's launch goes well. I would love to like chat about, like a potential fundraise. And I was like, oh, wow. Turns out that guy then went on to lead our seed round, which was crazy because he was literally the first guy, that ever messaged us. But then once you talk to one VC and then you talk to another, and it's the same thing with angel investors too, they all talk. All VCs and investors and all that, they all talk. And so if there's a cool startup that comes across the table, if I put in a check, I'm going to tell you, this startup's really cool, by the way. You're going to put in a check, all that sort of thing. So that's actually probably one of the most effective sort of like networking things I've seen in operation. Like if VCs think there's a cool company on the table, like, wow, you'll meet so many people so quickly that you never knew was possible. And so by just building up More and more hype and more taking over Twitter, Product Hunt, Hacker News, all these sort of things, which of course leads VCs to find you, and angels too. But as well as that, all of the intros and all of like the VCs like sharing notes on the back end, that just led us to having an absolute array of investors that were just dying to invest, to the point that, I mean, we were lucky. This was also 2021. I'll say that, a little bit of a cheat code, but we literally had to like either turn away VCs, or we had to tell certain angels, they're like, oh, let's put in $1 million, and I'm like, no, like let's do like 250k, like chill. We don't have the space for this. I mean, we were oversubscribed, hence the 0.4 on the end of the 7.4 million. But yeah, very, very exciting time, and very validating to see people so ready to, like write checks for this sort of thing. But yeah, genuinely do cool things and people will come to you, and that's going to put you in like the best possible seat and the best possible leverage to get yourself a good deal. I think that one way or another you can get in front of a VC. I think that's possible for everyone, but that's not really the question that anybody asks. It's always about like, how do you raise a really good round? And in a sense, the best way to do that is never reach out to a VC. I've never sent a VC outbound email, as it's all been inbound. And I mean, of course, maybe we were lucky in that sense, but if you're building something truly cool and making waves on the internet, VC's entire job is to see who's making waves on the internet. And I think that aspect, the aspect of just like put everything else aside, just like heads down and build something cool, that is probably one of the biggest components as to why we raised to, I'll just say, like very preferential rounds. 2 rounds where we're like, that's great, I haven't given away too much of the company or control or just, any of the rubbish that's usually.
Yeah, coming back to the basics, build something people love. And you have been like focused on the product. Honestly, if I could, I would invest in Calendso. I saw that you have like 1% of the customers who have like 1% or like very small of the customers who also owns part of the company.
It's really cool. It's really cool to see that.
Yeah. I think last year when we spoke, you are already profitable and growing. And I don't know if you were like thinking of buying back some shares from the investors. Did that happen, or like did you buy back some shares, or like are you like stable on that side?
We didn't actually, although it is an idea that still remains in our minds, and I can't help but smile as I say that, because that's a very fortunate position for us to find ourselves in. I mean, the benefit is we just truly have such a wonderful cap table of incredible investors, both, institutional and individual. We really love having all of these people on board. And the only kind of adjustments that we really make to look to the cap table is people who may not want to be there. Like, for instance, ex-employees who left a few years ago and they're like, I could really use this money to like buy a house. Then, we probably find a way to connect them with someone else or something like that. But, in general, although it's an option that we have, we do actually really love our investors. And I think that's quite a lucky thing to say, but I think that it's very much sort of a net positive having them around.
Yeah, amazing. What is your advice on, and this is actually like almost advice for me, is that basically I have been bootstrapping my company to 7 figures, and we're a different type of company, more focused on immigration. But what is your thought on bootstrapping versus raising venture? Like, what is your simple decision metric for early stage founders?
Yeah, bootstrapping is awesome, because who doesn't like to, stick their finger up to the VCs and be like, I don't need you. That's always fun. And of course, I kind of played that game in a sense that when we raised the seed round, I always said to VCs, I'm like, maybe we raise or maybe not. Like, we have plenty of money to fund this. Like, if I pull out my phone, I had like $600 to my name, like total savings and everything. But I was like, yeah, do we need VC money? Only if it makes sense for us. So that being said, it's always cool to like put off VCs and wait till you get like a really good deal. And, you know, I sit here right now smiling a lot because we always got such good deals. I'm not in a position where, yeah, like we've ever given too much away or any stuff like that. That being said, I think that the biggest companies are built with funding. I think that is just a reality that we sit in. I mean, YC and VCs and all that, they'll all tell you that. And I think they even have some metrics. But truly, if you want to build like the next massive companies, then yeah, VC funding is going to help you get there. It's a real thing. But, you know, there's applicability to it. There is a world where I would build another kind of business, but not really be shooting for being the biggest possible company. And it's okay to do that. I just don't think that maybe you're building the next, you know, Airbnb or Uber or Stripe or something like that without any VC funding. But, you know, like I say, is kind of each to their own.
Yeah, I agree. And like your position is probably the best position in the way that you can technically bootstrap if you want to. You could have.
Yeah.
But you wanted to go to 1 billion users and you basically were in a very like sweet condition. I wanted to know a little bit about your like struggle as an immigrant founder, because you're not from the US. You are from UK. And I actually don't know which visa status you came with, or did you face any issues being an immigrant here?
To some degree, yeah. I mean, it's the US. Immigration is never easy unless you marry a US citizen, you know. But there was kind of a point, 2023, midway through 2023, we basically made a decision that like it needed to be in the US. For various reasons, but you know, like I needed to get to the US as soon as possible, and this was like almost like time sensitive. And then it's like, okay, great, but like how does one get into the US? And then we hear about like there's the O1, but like the O1 is not an easy feat, and sort of like the burden of evidence and things like that there is huge. You know, it took quite a long time. I mean, so say halfway through 2023 is when I decided I need to get to the US. And it was December 27th that I actually picked up the visa. I remember it because it was just after Christmas. And I was like, who wants to go on a trip to the US Embassy? Yeah, I mean, the O1 is never easy. And then, you know, I get here and visas get you in the country, but they also don't afford you many rights. And so no matter who you are, really, you're always very much sitting like at risk of, you know, anything can happen. They can just, you know, take away a visa whenever they want. And every time you go to the border and you get questioned and they're like, what do you do? What are you a founder of? What made you deserve the O1 visa? You're here for a conference. What kind of conference? You know, all of that stuff, you know, you're at the mercy of them, not just being like, rip out the visa and then like send you back home. So it's really weird because, you know, moving to the US was not my personal choice. Like I sort of had to do it for the company. But nevertheless, I realized that, of course, I'm trying to work on this company for a long time. The US ultimately has to become my home anyway. You know, it's always pretty scary that, you know, your immigration status is tied to the fact that your company is doing crazy things. And that like if Cal.com ever went into some kind of like stagnant period where we're not like growing massively and doing crazy things, then they might just be like, yeah, we're not renewing your visa, you need to get out. And it made me very anxious to kind of like plant roots here. In 2024, once I moved here, only a couple months after moving here and being on the O1, I was like, there's a US election coming up in a long time down the road. I'm like, I have a feeling Trump is going to win. I just had that gut feeling. I'm like, I also have a feeling that like if I want to go for the green card, it will be tougher in that case. And so I was like, okay, let's go for the green card. And I get on a call with the lawyers and I'm like, great, this will just be like, it'll be just like the O1. And they're like, no. They're like, if you want to do the EB1, they're like, it's like the O1 is like the top whatever percent, and like the green card is like the top minuscule portion. And they're like, the burden of proof there is like so high. And, you know, as well, I think one of the things you have to do is prove that you're of critical importance to the United States. Like, that's a damning sentence right there. And it's like, how are most of us supposed to achieve that? And so that's the thing that's like such a struggle, I think, for absolutely anybody, is that, you know, the only path to safety, you know, let's assume a green card to be safety because it's kind of permanent, is tied behind such a high degree of achievement. And, you know, luckily, as you can imagine, Cal.com can power many very fundamental services in government, in healthcare and things like that. And ultimately, it's because of that specifically as to why I was actually able to get the EB1. But, you know, you're told that it's like such a high bar, and I've a lot of friends who do absolutely incredible things, are like practically famous, their companies are doing so well, but because they aren't of critical importance to the United States, they can't get it. And that's crazy.
That is so crazy. Yeah. Yeah, I cannot believe like a company like Cal.com's founder has to go through this kind of stress. But yeah,
nobody's exempt from it.
Yeah.
And you know, you can, and there's no way around it as well. Like, you can get yourself immigration lawyers, but you still have to do the work. Like, you still have to prove to the US that, like, I'm the one that's putting all of that evidence together. And I spent like so much money. It's really not cheap. And that's the scariest thing as well, is I think when you put together like the total costs across the O1 and the EB1, it must be like $35,000 or something like that.
Also the stress of not being here, you know, like the stress. So Bailey, these are like some very quick 10 seconds like rapid fire questions, silly questions. Dark mode or light mode in laptop?
Light mode.
Favorite SaaS application?
Superhuman.
Favorite open source project other than Cal.com?
I think it would be GitLab. Tremendous project and organization.
Okay. Any recent favorite books?
I gotta admit, I haven't had the time to read for a long time. I'd love to get back into reading, but...
Okay. iOS or Android?
It's always been iOS for me.
That makes sense. And is there any one word your team would describe you with? Like one word your team would describe you?
Direct.
Okay, awesome. Do you have any role models?
I don't like traditional role models, and I always think that it's silly to sort of subscribe to just one person's way of thinking. I like to take a lot of inspiration from very like unconventional people. Like, my dad is like my biggest inspiration for sure. But, you know, I'm not one that is inspired by, you know, like the top people in our industry and things like that, because none of us have any idea what we're talking about.
Agreed. And your dad is a perfectly amazing role model. So I guess I wanted to know a little bit about your like what is keeping you excited right now that you're in a special position in Cal.com. It's growing. What is the moonshot feature you cannot sleep right now?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing well. Like, we're 4.5 years in and we're doing well. And you benchmark us against startups and, you know, we're doing well. But the thing that will keep you awake every single night as any good founder is you're like, why are we not doing more? You know, when you see companies like, Cursor and Deal and things like that, the fastest revenue growing companies out there, you always wonder, like, well, where's the gap between me and them? And there's always somebody bigger than you to compare yourself to. And I ask myself that question a lot. And a lot of the answer really lies in growth and go to market and things like that. So the most exciting thing for us right now is that we're typically a fully async, fully remote company. I'm the only person in the US even. But what we're now doing is we're going to be opening an office in New York and hiring a team of like really good like sales and marketing people to just like really own the funnel, start to finish. and just build like a really cracked in-person team that are like sitting there brainstorming, collaborating, put a whiteboard on the wall and start drawing. There's something that's really exciting about like the kind of productivity that can unlock. So
yeah, I love that you chose New York as the center. I also am very pro New York for startups. Any, I would say, like advice for the early stage founders, like if you or someone who is starting in 2025, the game is very different. Any communities you would recommend joining, or like how would you tackle the startup space, like SaaS specifically, in 2025?
Yeah, I think if I was to do it again, a quote that really sticks with me, and I always paraphrase this, but it's Warren Buffett's quote: "When others are greedy, be fearful. When others are fearful, be greedy." Always look for the angle that everybody else isn't doing. Whenever you look at the most successful people, the most successful things in life, it's when others are looking this way, look this way. I think that that's still the thing that we should be doing today. If I started again today, I would not just jump on the AI hype train and do the same thing as everybody else. I think we've established that in a sense. But if you really look at what nobody else is looking at, but what's such an important and fundamental thing. Scheduling is one of those things. Nobody looks at scheduling. Nobody really builds in scheduling. We don't really have any competitors to what we're doing, aside from say like Calendly and a couple of like big like incumbent players. There's no other startups that are like racing us to do the same thing that we're doing. So yeah, always look where like nobody else is looking. Communities and things like that, I would say don't stress it. Like it's always fun to like talk to other founders and things like that, but I think that people push way too much importance on like networking events and things like that. At the end of the day, like random people that you meet at a Mixer event are not really going to make or break your company. I did everything significant in Cal.com's timeline, from a house in a town just east of London. My co-founder lives on a farm in the middle of nowhere. You could like yell at the top of your lungs and nobody could hear you. We're not here in SF or here in New York, like networking and doing all these things. So really just like heads down, don't distract yourself.
This is like your early days. What was the single biggest mistake in your early days which caused like losing your customer base? Like you made like one silly mistake and you almost lost your customer base.
Oh, we totally got carried away with like ship fast and break things, like that's an incredibly fun thing to do in the early stages. I remember the days where like I would just pull out my laptop, spend a couple of hours coding and just ship a new feature. But there comes a point where you really do have to, mature your engineering efforts and always find that balance between never shipping anything but being stable, and being on the cutting edge and shipping things and breaking things. Because at the end of the day, we live in the scheduling industry. It's an industry where like nothing is allowed to break. Really, nothing is allowed to break. Oh man, if we messed up something before you just like push a bad code change to production, that results in like sales calls not being booked. That means in revenue getting lost. For some of our customers, like if we're down for like 15 minutes, like the revenue that loses them is like crazy. And of course we catch the heat for that. There have been some like chilling moments where we've messed something up, the customer shouting at us, and we really learned something. And those were like really good early points of learning that just led us to really like reshape our engineering culture, DevOps, and sort of like.
So not ship as fast, like to break it. Trying to understand the
check things a little bit more before you're shipping them. Build those like mature engineering processes.
Makes sense. I wanted to ask you a question on running a remote team, because I was looking at your website and it's very pretty. I think you used a tool for like visualizing all this. I forgot the name of the tool. Metabase, yeah. And how many countries are your team located right now?
That's a good question. It's got to be like
10 plus?
I'd say, yeah, like 12, 13, something like that.
12, 13. So I read your entire about section. I like some interesting points that you are running an open startup. I first heard about open startup actually from Buffer originally. Then I have been also a big fan of Peter Levels of Nomad List. I have been myself a nomad for a long time. I have been a full-scale digital nomad from COVID. I stayed 3 months in 21 countries. So each country for 3 months.
That's crazy.
So I'm a very pro digital nomad person. And when I was like, oh, this is also becoming like a very big digital nomad supporting company. How do you run a remote team which is so globally distributed but still keep them aligned in the vision? Because this is something I struggled a lot with. Like, how do you do that?
It's always a struggle. Being remote has its benefits, but it also has its drawbacks. And for us, one of the drawbacks is keeping people motivated, keeping people aligned, and also like connecting them with other team members and things like that. It's so easy to get to know someone face to face in person, but it's not across Slack. And the thing is as well, because we're in so many different time zones, we're asynchronous as well. So not only are we not face to face, but we also have very little Zoom calls. There are only just tiny little handfuls of people that like actually get on calls with each other during the week. There are people. I had a call with somebody 2 weeks ago. He's been with us for over a year, and we're like, oh wow, this is our first time on a call. Oh, nice to meet you. It's crazy. But yeah, I think just really like sharing all of the updates that you can. You can never overshare really as a founder. Make sure as well, like the stuff you're putting out internally, externally, like these guys read my like Twitter posts and things like that where I talk about like the vision for Cal.com. They see the interviews and the conference talks and things like that. Just like anything, you can kind of be inspired by anyone, and really you should aim to inspire your team, and just kind of like your values will then become their values. They have equity, they are part of something. Show them what that is.
Yeah, I think you're very active online on like sharing your thoughts, and your team is also seeing the thoughts. So like that's a good way. I wanted to know the impact of AI right now in Cal, especially on the team side, because when you started in 2021, it wasn't as crazy in terms of the AI innovation happening. I mean, previously people were just growing their teammates. Do you think that you will reduce the number of employees eventually, or how are you tackling this whole AI shift happening in the workforce?
The good thing is we don't have to reduce employees, and we actually told everybody that. Always a good thing to kind of like put a statement out and just be like, yeah, we're not like firing anybody to replace them with an AI engineer. I believe in making people 10x engineers or whatever it is that they do using AI. Like I can do so much more as a founder because of AI. Like I can do like legal work or finance work and things like that, which I'd never previously be able to do because of AI. We implement the same thing across the team. We just have people that are really, really good, and we tell them, we kind of made it a policy, like you should be making the most out of AI tools. Like you should be as much of a 10 or 20x engineer as possible by give like Devin or some kind of like AI software engineer any of the small tasks you don't want to do. At the same time, then jump into Cursor or Windsurf or something like that, and then start working on this. If you're in like our growth team or something like that, use AI to like automate content production and things like that. You can, like all the blog posts and things like that. You can get all of like the ideas and the outlines and all the research, these things with AI. Let's build all of these like automated workflows to make us do a lot with a little people to an even greater degree than what we were even able to do before.
I wanted to actually know also, Bailey, on the, like you as a founder, do you know the 3H, the hacker, hustler, and hipster framework? That you can either be a hacker who is building things, hipster who is the designer, and hustler who is a better salesperson.
Huh.
Usually this three combination is the most ruthless combination in the founding team. What are you as a person? Are you a designer, builder, or salesperson, or all three?
I'd like to say I can at least somewhat do all three, although some of them not so well. I think like I'll tackle design first. I'm not so good at, like I don't think I'd be designing, like the Cal.com UI by myself. But I think there's a good thing. If you really have an eye for design and an eye for like nice looking products, especially UX and things like that, that's going to really help as a founder. I think that's probably even a fundamental thing. As long as you know what's good and what's not. You like, sometimes I push back to the design team and I'm like, hey, look, I don't really like what we've done here. And sometimes I will make like terrible mock-ups in Figma or something like that. You know, I'm not a designer. I don't know how to use like auto layout and all the crazy stuff in Figma. But, you know, like I'll try and put something together which explains my vision, and then like they'll just refine it. Of course, hacker, I think that always remains true for both me and my co-founder. Neither of us are exactly best-in-class software engineers, but we absolutely get our hands dirty, all the quick fixes and things like that. Sometimes it's just so efficient just to like, just open it up and fix it yourself. Like by the time I like find the right engineer to do it and then send them a message and then all that, you know, like I may as well just get it done quick. But you can also kind of apply that to all the other aspects of business. Talking about we automate a lot of things. We look at a problem and we're like, okay, how do we do this? We have a ton of people who apply for our like internships. So the thing I'm building right now is I'm coding like an AI application thing where it will go onto your GitHub profile, look at your open source contributions to cal.com, and it will like use AI to like review the quality of the code and like rank these people to see like, do you meet the threshold to like get the internship or something like that. I think you should just always be automating. And then I think first and foremost, I think I'm more of a hustler than anything. Maybe not necessarily in sales, although I'm pretty okay at it. But I just think in terms of like being the guy that like gets things done, that works with everybody. You know, like I'll go around the city to existing customers' offices or, you know, to new customers, shake some hands, get some stuff done. I would say that's like my favorite part about being a founder.
Yeah, you are basically a very interesting combination of like almost a balance of all three characters, a little bit mashed up. So excited to follow like what happens to you as a founder as you become more mature. I wanted to know a little bit about your processes as a founder. So for example, I like a little bit different process in a week or a day, what you think you do daily or weekly, which is very different as a founder. For example, I'll give an example. I love journaling, like physical, non-device journaling. Like I would be so chaotic if I didn't have a writing device. How do you start your Monday, or what is your process?
I live a pretty like chaotic lifestyle. You know, I'm jealous of people like you who have their routines set out, and you know that you journal every day and have, you know, consistency. Yeah, I'm always just kind of like working at different times and doing different things each week, or I always plan things at the last minute as well. So whenever I have that like small talk with coworkers and they're like, what are you doing this weekend? I'm like, I don't know. Like I'll probably like find out by Friday night what I'm doing Saturday morning or something. But yeah, I don't really follow too much structure in life.
You follow the going with the flow model.
Yeah, and that's kind of like part of who I am. You know, some people have to like plan things to go out. Whereas like me and my dad, if we would go somewhere, it would be like Sunday afternoon. We're like, it's 4 p.m. Do you want to just like drive a couple of hours, go here? We'll just do whatever. We'll like find something cool there. And I think that really influenced how I am as a person.
Yeah, just vibing. Just vibing. In the last 4 years, do you think that you had to evolve in some places as a founder? Like, because whenever we start, we're a little new, right? And then over time, we have to learn some new skills. What do you think that you learned in the last 4 years as an individual founder, like on your own character set, that you didn't have much, but you grew into it a little bit?
I have changed entirely as a person, both in the business and the personal context, since being a founder. It really changed who I am. I can't even begin to describe just how entirely different of a person I was. I always grew up relatively like introverted. I was always more of a shy one. You know, I was always, when it was a Christmas play in school, I'd be the one like back there in the corner because I never wanted a part. I didn't want anybody to like see me on stage. You know, now I'm like, I'll go to like a conference and like speak in front of a bunch of people and things like that. But no, I think it also just changed. Like a lot of being a founder is just, you've got to be confident. You've got to radiate a certain thing. And like, number one, is that going to command respect with, people that you're selling to, with your employees? Like, you pay their wages, like their family eats on the money that you give them. They want to feel like the person who's at the helm is like truly in control and is like confident about that. So, for just everything, investors as well. How do you just make investors entirely believe in your company, believe in you? So a lot of it is just confidence, charisma, just learning new ways to work with people. Yeah, I suppose that there are skills that you develop. I never knew how to do sales. I never knew how to do finance or legal stuff or compliance. So, like in terms of actual real world skills of what I do in my day job, I knew none of it before. Being a founder is so different day one than it is to like day 900, 1,000, something like that. Gone are the days where I could just build for fun.
Yeah, I love that you basically are almost like building this company almost helped you coming out of the shell. Like you are like, it has given you so much new skill in terms of confidence, charisma, being outspoken. And if you didn't build it, you'd be like kind of like in this shell.
I suppose so. I think it was actually a few years leading up to when I started Cal.com that I did. Like I slowly started to become a bit more extroverted, but like, I think once you get thrown into being a founder is being thrown into new situations.
Yes.
And I was like thrown into like, I now need to talk to investors. And so you kind of like, you fake it till you make it. Like you puff up the chest and you like put on the confidence. And then over time, that just kind of becomes your personality.
The same thing I'm doing with the podcast, like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're just out here, trying to be the most confident version of ourselves.
Yeah.
And I mean, eventually that really changes your personality.
Definitely, I agree. I was so scared before the episode today. I was like, oh my God, my first episode ever. I think for me, like I changed a lot on, so previously I have an engineering background and I was primarily a builder persona. But I think in the last 4 years, I had to see that how do I empower my team to almost like self-manage themselves without needing me for every small decision, because like I'm really never fully free on the strategy until I have to be very busy on the day-to-day operation. So that I had to grow a lot because I was so bad in managing people. I'm sure you also probably grown. Maybe you are already
definitely
good.
No, definitely. There are always like learnings and good and bad experiences and things like that.
I love your anti-FOMO approach to life. Like that's basically what I'll take from today. I wanted to thank you, Bailey, for like being in our first podcast.
Of course, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, and wanted to give you something, a gift. I want you to open and see basically what is inside. Yeah. So, if you can, so this is actually this is a bottle which says "For Immigrants by Immigrants."
Oh, nice.
Yeah, you can open it if you want to.
And it has a temperature display.
It has a temperature display.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this.
Yeah.
For Immigrants by Immigrants.
From me to you.
That's crazy.
Thank you. And this is actually like a silly, almost silly pun of giving you a physical calendar.
This is
this is cal.com. So
I love it.
We looked in Amazon, like, can we find something which looks like cal.com in terms of font, simplicity?
You know what's crazy? Most day I don't even know what the day is. I'm like,
there we go. This is
like, I genuinely do not know what day of the week it is right now or what like number day we're on. Like I would have to look at my watch for that.
This is your
I can't look you in the eye and tell you what day of the week it is right now.
This is your physical cal.com.
Thank
you.
So now when I have such little sleep and like right now I wake up and I'm like, what day is it today?
Yeah, there we go. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.